Cruise Line Geography and Cultural Diversity Chapter 3 World Weather and Climatic Patterns. Learning Objectives. At the end of this chapter, the student will able to describe the different weather, climatic conditions of the world, identify the different landforms and water forms. This chapter considers the influence of the different weather and climatic condition on the cruise industry. It is impossible to consider cruising without reflecting on the condition that arise from the prevailing climate. Passenger comfort and safety are direct affected if a cruise ship sails in a particular part of an ocean or sea at a particular time of the year. This also holds true for destinations visited and shore activities that may be offered. To avoid potential discomfort for customers, cruise ships tend to steer clear of parts of the world where difficult sea conditions occur because of geography, climate, and seasonal variations. Knowledge of weather patterns and records of tidal variations permit cruise operators to predict where ships can travel with a high degree of safety to enable virtually all the world's ocean and seas to be traversed and all coastal ports to be visited. Weather. Weather is the state of the atmosphere at any given time and place. Most of the weather that affects people, agriculture, and ecosystems takes place in the lower layer of the atmosphere. Familiar aspects of weather include temperature, precipitation, clouds, and wind that people experience throughout the course of a day. Severe weather conditions include hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, and droughts. Weather cycles. Weather patterns are complex. They influenced by many factors, including the sun's ray, the world's rotational axis, the land masses and oceans, currents, and the moon's gravitational pull, which creates tidal variations. Northern and southern hemispheres experience seasons at opposite times of the year, reflecting the position of the world as it orbits the sun. Tropical zones, the point where the Earth is closest to the sun, is known as the equator. The tropics of Cancer and Capricorn are lines of latitude that run parallel to the equator at 250 north and 250 south, respectively. These two boundaries define the region that is known as the tropics. Points above and below the equator can be affected by bad weather and storms, although the equator can be calm. The weather effect when the wind and sea are calm is known as the doldrums. Tropical cyclones are triggered by latent heat, water condensation, and cloud formations. These can be monitored and, to a degree, patterns can be predicted so that ships are forewarned and can take appropriate measures. Most contemporary cruise ships, with the odd exception, are designed for cruising in relatively benign conditions and, therefore, itineraries are influenced in part by weather patterns. Cyclones can create winds in excess of 120 kilometers (75 miles) per hour. The specific name of tropical cyclones depends on the area. Reese, 1992, Atlantic and Eastern Pacific. Hurricanes Western Pacific. Typhoons Philippines. Baguio Typhoons, Australia. Willy Willy Indian Oceans. Cyclones. Climate is the long-term pattern of weather in a particular area. Weather can change from hour to hour, day to day, month to month, or even year to year. A region's weather patterns, usually tracked for at least 30 years, are considered its climate. Different parts of the world have different climates. Some parts of the world are hot and rainy nearly every day. They have a tropical wet climate. Others are cold and snow-covered most of the year. They have a polar climate. Between the icy poles and the steamy tropics are many other climates that contribute to Earth's biodiversity and geologic heritage. Climate is determined by a region's climate system. 5 major components of climate system: the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, the cryosphere, lithosphere, and land surface, the biosphere. According to the Köppen climate classification system, there are 5 climate groups: tropical, dry, mild, continental, and polar. These climate groups are further divided into climate types. The following list shows the climate groups and their types. tropical wet, rainforest, monsoon wet and dry, savanna, dry arid semi-arid mild Mediterranean humid subtropical continental warm summer cool summer subarctic, boreal, polar tundra ice cap. Tourist and climates cruise ships tend to focus on warm temperate climates and calm seas. However, continuous growth in sectors such as Alaska, the emergence of Antarctica and the southernmost areas of South America, interest in northerly sectors such as Iceland, Scandinavia, and Baltic ports are testament to the diversity of choice that is now available for cruise tourists. Invariable, tourists make judgments about what parts of the world to visit by taking into account a broad spectrum of personal circumstances and by accessing new information or relying on prior learning about the place to be visited. These decisions are highly personalized and are likely to include a desire to learn new things, a drive to satisfy personal motives, the need to address latent curiosity, the opportunity to relax and escape routine, and requirements to experience a different climate. This need to identify an appropriate and desirable environment for a vacation raises questions about which climate tourists regard as comfortable. Based on an analysis of world climates, Burton presents a 5-stage model to describe tourists' clothing regimen in relation to climate type. Landform: a landform is a feature on the Earth's surface that is part of the terrain. The 4 major types of landforms: mountains, hills, plateaus, and plains. The minor landforms: buttes, canyons, valleys, and basins. Tectonic plate movement under the Earth can create landforms by pushing up mountains and hills. Erosion by water and wind can wear down land and create landforms like valleys and canyons. Both processes happen over a long period of time, sometimes millions of years. The highest landform on Earth is a mountain, Mount Everest in Nepal. It measures 8,850 meters, 29,035 feet, above sea level. It is part of the Himalaya range that runs across several countries in Asia. Landforms can exist underwater in the form of mountain ranges and basins under the sea. The Mariana Trench, the deepest landform on Earth, is in the South Pacific Ocean. Different types of water bodies. Water bodies constitute areas of water, both salt and fresh, large and small, which are distinct from one another in various ways. They range in size from oceans at the biggest end of the spectrum to little brooks and streams. Geographers normally don't include small, temporary water features such as puddles in this category. From pond to Pacific, bodies of water rank among the most significant natural resources on the planet, to say the least. The biggest bodies of water: oceans. Oceans account for the largest types of water bodies. All marine saltwater on Earth technically connects in a single world ocean, but the arrangement of continents makes it more common to distinguish between individual ocean basins. The Pacific Ocean ranks as the largest, followed by the Atlantic, Indian, Southern, and Arctic. Humankind depends on oceans for food, such as fish and squid, for transport via ships and for their enormous influence on the atmosphere and global water and nutrient cycles. Ocean subsections: seas. Some coastal reaches of ocean, in particular portions partly enclosed by land masses, compose water body types called seas. Examples include the Mediterranean Sea, the South China Sea, the Caribbean Sea and the Bering Sea. Though these and most other seas join directly to the ocean, certain landlocked bodies of saline water go by the name, notably the Caspian Sea. The sea category also encompasses certain smaller coastal ocean divisions such as bays, straits and gulfs. Inland bodies of water, lakes. Some also classify the Caspian Sea as a lake, which in general terms represents a body of either fresh or saltwater completely enclosed by land. Lakes may be huge, such as the Great Lakes of North America or Russia's Lake Baikal, which is the deepest, or tiny. There isn't a clear-cut distinction, for example, between lake and pond. A great number of processes create lakes, from glacial erosion and volcanic eruption to the damming, natural or man-made, of rivers. Bodies of water in motion, rivers and streams. Water flowing on the surface of the earth forms rivers, or the smaller versions variously called streams, creeks, brooks, rills and the like. In most cases the freshwater in these channels ultimately empties to the ocean, though rivers, which may or may not run year-round, can also flow into closed basins with no outlet. Rivers serve as hugely important sources of water and energy as well as transportation corridors and fishing grounds, and for many millennia humans have settled along them. Traditionally the Nile in Africa has been considered the longest river in the world, but some evidence suggests the Amazon of South America, the largest, also exceeds it in length. Other great rivers include the Yangtze, Congo, Mekong, Mississippi and Mackenzie. The frozen kind of water bodies, glaciers. It may seem odd to call a glacier a body of water, and not all geographers would, but ice of course represents a form of water, and because of their mobile, if slow-moving, nature glaciers are often likened to frozen rivers. Counting mountain glaciers, ice caps, and the Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets, glacial ice, some of which may be millions of years old, covers about 10% of the planet's land area while storing roughly 3/4 of its freshwater. Global sea level would rise by some 230 feet if all those glaciers melted. Thank you class for listening. Created by Rosalie Clave Lyceum of the Philippines instructor.